Hey Collective, and welcome back to the channel. Today is going to be an interesting message. It's going to be a play on one of the last posts that I made regarding the using your imagination to solve problems in your day-to-day life. And so today I wanted to focus that on a fairy tale type of setting that I thought would be fun as a part of a creation that I had always envisioned for my own life, and I thought it would be really kind of cute to share it with you all since we're moving into this 2021 era of newness in Aquarian age. So I decided that I would go ahead and share it because I think it's kind of, I was reminded of it earlier today when I was trying to find some peace and quiet. And what it is a fairy tale that surrounds the new gay dream. And what it was is that when I was younger, I used to have this imagination that would be even more rampant. And I used to have this fantasy where I would be minding my own business and suddenly get inspiration somehow from something I saw in my day-to-day life. That's why I believe so firmly in living each day like your present. And so I decided that I would share one of the stories that I created, which was that there once was a man, a king by the name of Adam. And Adam used to go around having a really great life, very, very social, very, very happy, until one day something happened where he decided that he wanted something more out of life. He had reached the proverbial wall, and he had started to find that he was tired of the same type of greediness and same kind of like materialistic endeavors. And so he decided that he would go and take a trip, and he decided to go to another land, and he hadn't really ever ventured far from his own reality because he thought that that was all there was. And upon his journey, he ran across this young kingdom that he had never heard of, and he had to stop for gas, as you do. Well, in this case, it would be a horse that needed to eat and get some water, and so he stopped. And it was on the property of another young, flighty man that he didn't quite understand. And so he stopped to engage the person very innocently and asked, "Do you mind if the horse drinks from your pond?" And the guy, seeming a little bit distracted, goes, "Oh, of course not. Everything's free. You can drink the water. The horse can drink the water. You can have whatever you want. Does the horse want carrots?" Like being very, very cordial. And the guy goes and gets the carrot for the horse, and the king is sitting there, and he's kind of looking around at how peaceful everything was. It was the complete opposite of his kingdom, where everything was busy and everybody was in everybody else's business. And in this location, he just found it to be very, very serene, and he would sit there and he started to notice that the birds were everywhere and there were insects everywhere, and he saw all this life that he had never really seen in his own environment, and he started to question if it was a foreign world. And so as the other young man comes running back, the king asks him, he says, "Thank you. Well, thank you for the carrot and for the hospitality. What's your name?" And the young man says, "My name is Steve." And the King Adam asks Steve, what kingdom am I in?" And so Steve says, "Well, this is the land of imagination." And the King Adam looks at him and goes, "Imagination?" And the young man Steve goes, "Yes, this is my kingdom. I am the ruler of the land of imagination." And the King Adam looked at him and goes, "How does that even work?" And so King Steve looked at the King Adam and says, "Well, I work on dreams, and I help my kingdom fulfill theirs." And I'll give you a perfect example. There was a woman in our kingdom who her husband had passed away, and I felt some love for her as one of my people, and so I decided to endorse her venture into creating hats. And now she is the hat queen of our kingdom, and she has never been happier. And now she lives a very single life. She's very, very a woman of faith, so she never remarried, and now she creates all the hats for our kingdom. And the King Steve pulls out a hat and goes, "Look at this." And it was the most ridiculous hat King Adam had ever seen. It was just ridiculous, off the scale, just madness. And King Adam looks at it and starts to chuckle, and he goes, "Well, that's an interesting hat." And then King Steve says, "Well, that's the point. We're of interest here. We value everyone in our kingdom and each of their individual creation. That's why it's called the kingdom of imagination. We focus our energy on uplifting our people by making sure that their dreams and their needs are met, because it helps them be happier and more fulfilled people, and they do more for the society and for our community. And we take care of, as you can see, our kingdom, and we make sure that instead of us eating all the time, we make sure that we irrigate properly, and we make sure we take care of it so that it takes care of us. And every year we get a wonderful bounty of food. We never have to venture out, and that's probably why you've never heard of us, is because we're a self-sustained society. And King Adam goes, well, how do you guys make money? And King Steve says, we don't make money. We draw money into us because others want our products. Others want our vision. They want to understand our imagination. That hat that you chuckled at is worth quite a bit of money to the exterior world. People who are a little bit more eccentric can't stop buying this hat, and the woman pretty much could own the kingdom if she wanted to, but she is a modest woman. And so King Adam says, I don't understand. Where, in my kingdom, everybody has a trade, and everybody, is competing with each other. Don't you guys compete for business? And King Steve says, no, you never heard of us. Yet we still are one of the wealthiest kingdoms in the world. And King Adam says, well, isn't there a greed problem? And King Steve says, well, not here. Because here everybody has an equal, they have their fair share. So there's nothing for them to worry about. All they have to do is put their product out, and they know that no one else is going to go. They find their own olive branch. They go do their own thing. So it's not a competitive thing. It's about equality. And if everybody's equal, then if two people have the same idea, then they compete in that way. But it's still the best product wins. It's not an oversaturation. We keep it small. And so King Adam's staring at him like he's a unicorn that's, boinking at another unicorn, just fascinated by this person's conversation. And so King Adam, a little bit confused by the whole thing because it was a very simplistic way of living, looks at King Steve and says, what about your wife? And King Steve says, oh no, I don't have a wife, I'm gay. And King Adam says, in my kingdom you're not allowed to be gay. You have to be a certain kind of gay. If you are gay, you have to be very, very, very masculine, and you have to be very, very, very driven, and you have to be very, 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 very overconfident, and you have to be very, very egotistical. And King Steve says, well, thank God I don't live there. I would be bored out of my mind. Who wants to date that? And King Adam just looks at King Steve like, oh, you slapped my clit. And King Steve says, well, I didn't mean to offend you, sir, but you seem to be in a state of living in someone else's kingdom. I thought that you were the king of that kingdom. How can you worry about other people's opinions of you or worry about any of that? And he goes, well, it's not that. It's that in our kingdoms, we compete with other kingdoms. And what ends up happening is that they can ruin our reputation. That undermines our credibility. And King Steve looks at King Adam and says, well, that's interesting. I thought that your credibility is something only you can own. The only person that can undermine that is you. If you allow others to dominate and tell you how to live your life, then how will you ever achieve true happiness? You're always living by someone else's rules. Don't you want something more for yourself? I mean, that's what we did. It wasn't like we did a conscious effort. My parents were really big on letting me do what I wanted to do. And when I got older, I became so unique that everybody fell in love with me, and I didn't have to work at it. And King Adam goes, what do you mean? Isn't that manipulative? And King Steve said, no, I never tried to be anybody but me. My dream is to meet my Mr. Right and have a kingdom that keeps going like this. Something very loving and something very nurturing that keeps everybody in equality, and it helps people stay happy all the time. It may not be the best kingdom in the world. I'm sure that your kingdom has a lot more contraptions, and I'm sure there's a lot more money, but we're like a farming community with just a lot of dough. And you know what you do with dough? You feed the community, and everybody's happy and they're healthy. And we make sure that everybody that comes in is taken care of, and we treat everybody very politely, and we open doors. And the men in our community grow up, walking on the outside of the carriage lane, so that the feminine is walking on the inside. It's not that she can't take care of herself; it's just a gentlemanly thing to do. And we open doors for each other, and we say thank you, and we take responsibility for our own mistakes. And our community gathers around people who make mistakes and helps them get back up on their feet. And then we ensure that anybody who has an opinion is heard, and we go by majority, but we always make sure that no one feels out of the loop. And we hold open elections, and we do all these things to ensure that everybody is heard, and it seems to run very, very well. But we live in our own environment, and we create our own universe. We have a little patch of heaven that the divine has given us. And King Adam looks at him and goes, that sounds wonderful. Do you mind if I come back? And King Steve says, I don't see why not. You can bring your wife. And King Adam goes, I don't have a wife. I'm gay. And King Steve says, oh. Well, then you're welcome back, of course, at any time. Bring whoever you want. Just know that customarily in our environment, we plan it out a little bit so that, it can be a fun experience for everybody involved. So just let me know how many people and I will set it up. And so King Adam goes and he finishes his little ride to where he was heading, and he spends the first night there, and he can't stop thinking about King Steve's kingdom. And he keeps wondering how it all operates, and he decides at the last minute that he would send an owl. I don't know, I'm creating this on the spot. An owl, and that the owl will let King Steve know if it's okay if he and the horse just by themselves come and spend a couple days there to see what that is like and what the environment would be like. And so King Steve immediately sends an owl back. It takes about a day. So 2 days in, we find King Adam making his way back to King Steve's town, or kingdom, and King Steve has a full band playing for them as they arrive. And it's not like a king's entrance. It's more like, a lot of jazz music playing. And King Adam's a little thrown by there's no trumpets and there's no big... No, it's just, it's just jazz, and people are like on the street and they're showing their boobs to them, and they're doing all this fun stuff, and they're living their life in frivolity, and they're like throwing, I guess in those days would be like bread beads, I don't know, something creative like that. And they're, when they catch him, they dunk it in their coffee, and everybody's just having donuts and coffee, and everybody's just having a great time. There's a lot of jazz playing in the background. And King Adam is completely bamboozled, but just doesn't understand what the hell's going on. But he's totally having a good time, and he can't help himself but realize that everything that he was worried about and everything he was running from is now present in his face, but in a way that makes him jovial. And so he starts to stare at Steve with so much intrigue that it makes Steve a little bit uncomfortable at first. But then Steve looks at Adam and goes, "Is there something that you particularly want to ask me?" And the King Adam goes, "I don't understand you. You're different from me. But if I'm honest, I kind of want to know more about you. Not so much about the kingdom." And King Steve says, "Oh, well, then why don't we not have a date like the date that I thought we were having, and why don't we just go out together? We'll dress as peasants, and we'll go out into a neighboring town or a neighboring kingdom that I know that knows me, but they won't recognize me. But you will feel comfortable there, and I know that it's safe." And so King Adam reluctantly says, "Okay," but he's so intrigued by this personality that he can't ignore King Steve. Well, all night long, King Steve is pacing back and forth in his room, all nervous and jittery, because now he didn't know that this would happen, and he's all freaking out. He thought about, when he first saw King Adam, he was like, well, this, Adam and Steve would be an interesting story one day. And so, as he's pacing back and forth, King Adam just can't sleep either, and is just rocking back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and he's thinking about all of the struggles and all the problems that he has waiting for him back in his world. And he just, all of a sudden, it's dawn, and he hasn't gotten any rest, and sure enough, King Steve, all dressed to the nine, as a bum, shows up on the door and goes, "Hey, come on, let's go. It's sunlight." And King Adam's like, "But I haven't gotten any rest." And King Steve says, hello? See these bags? These aren't fake. Let's roll." And so they go out into the kingdom, and sure enough, King Adam is dressed like a peasant and just has the best day of his life. Just gets to go and mingle. Nobody's taking any pictures of him. Nobody's worried about him. Everybody's leaving him alone. He gets to play an instrument that he's never played before, and he looks like an idiot. And of course, that makes Steve just more enthralled with him. And the more that they dance and frolic with the peasant people, the more that King Adam remembers who he is, and the more his inner voice starts to play with him, and his inner child just is having the best time. So they're obviously falling in love with each other, and slowly but surely, King Steve starts to really, really question if he's going to be able to relinquish this wonderful connection, and he's all into King Adam, and King Adam just finally looks at King Steve and says, "I have to go back. I have to go back to my world. I have responsibilities. I have a kingdom that I must take care of." And out of nowhere he goes, "My brother is younger than me," or whoever. "I have an apprentice. And although my apprentice can take care of things, it's still my duty. And my duty is to the kingdom." And King Steve says, "Well, isn't your happiness best for the kingdom? Isn't that what would make the best sense for you? What do your parents say?" And King Adam goes into the story about his parents and how they had left him, and they had said to make sure that they took care of the kingdom and that they never relinquished the control of the people. And King Steve says, oh, okay. Do you think that they meant that you had to sacrifice your happiness to do that? And King Adam looks at King Steve deep into his eyes and says, no, I suppose they didn't. Well, then what's to say that when you find your happiness, that it won't be the complete opposite of what you thought it would be? Because you were busy trying to live someone else's instructions instead of, well, yours. And King Adam gets a little uncomfortable with the conversation and looks at King Steve. And King Steve is just like bashful and like kind of a little bit, let's face it, King Steve is a little weird. And King Steve says, well, I understand that you at least have to go back and you at least have to do what you feel you need to do. I've had the most magical time with you. I won't suppose that we will probably see each other that often, but I'm grateful to have met you. And King Adam says, me too. And so they part each other's company. And the next thing you know, King Adam is back in his palace, and everything's fine. He's actually very content. He had a very moving experience, but he understood that his new path was still with his kingdom, and he still had responsibilities. And then one day, he's minding his own business, and he starts to get that feeling of being weighed down again. And he goes, and he says to his servants, he goes, I'm going to go on a trip. And he goes. And he disappears for a minute, and of course the understudy, if you will, steps up and is running the kingdom while the king goes out on this errand. And King Adam arrives at King Steve's palace. And to his horror, everything has changed. Apparently while he was gone, King Steve fell violently ill and is on his deathbed. So King Adam goes rushing to King Steve and is at his side, and King Steve says to King Adam, what are you doing here? And King Adam's like, don't say anything. Conserve your energy. And King Steve looks at King Adam and goes, I don't have energy left. That's why I'm dying. And he said, but I'm glad you came. And he starts to have a ragged breath. And King Adam looks at King Steve and says, may I do one thing? And King Steve says, yes, you may kiss me. And it will be our only time. And King Adam kisses King Steve. And King Steve looks like he passes away. King Adam, distraught, goes to the room that he had been given while he was there and starts crying and just all of that. And wouldn't you know it, a butterfly comes flying in and lands right on King Adam's nose. Flighty as can be. And immediately King Adam goes, Steve. And King Steve doesn't say anything, but just starts flattering in his eyes and starts trying to lead him towards the balcony. And as he goes to the balcony, he looks out and he sees that King Steve is guiding him to the entire land that he was in, and the entire kingdom, and all of them had turned to butterflies. Everyone in the kingdom had transformed and made the jump to something else. And they were unified, and they were happy. And it was a gorgeous butterfly display of affection, and they were swarming all over King Adam, and King Adam just couldn't believe it. And for a moment, he found his true happiness in the ability to believe in the impossible, in the imagination. And without thinking about it, he says out to the universe, he says, I don't want to miss this. How do I transform into what's next? And a big ray of light comes from the sky, and poof, King Adam becomes a butterfly. And now he and Steve meet midair, and they fly away. And I thought, well, isn't that incredibly romantic? I wonder what happened to them. And I just thought that would be an interesting little fairy tale for those of you who are gay out there to redefine new fantasy about us. I mean, it's a little bit weird that they weren't together in human form, but then again, who's to say that that's the only expression of consciousness that there is? There's so much more out there. But just imagine if he hadn't have gone back, he would have never had seen what it is to truly fly.